But we do have Russ Schoene is standing by, and let's bring him on right now as we continue our 24 for 24 broadcast, our live stream. And Russ, I don't know if you heard any of this wacky conversation that we were having, but it's this is kind of one of those opportunities to bring a bunch of guys together that haven't maybe talked or seen each other for a while and get a chance to relive some things. And I know you've got some great memories that we'd like to talk to you about, but I know you are part of the effort and part of Rick Turner's staff that will hopefully be a part of coaching Olympic basketball with Jamaica being represented. So it's probably a big thing for you to be a part of, because it's something that you're already a part of anyway, as it turns out, this effort to bring Olympic basketball to Jamaica.
Well, I appreciate you bringing me on, but I was having a good time just listening backstage, and I was kind of wondering how the story was going to turn out. So,
we'll certainly fill you in on any stories that may be unfulfilled before you take off. But tell me about you were drafted in the NBA into Philadelphia in 1983, but you didn't get a chance to be a full part of that championship team, correct?
I was drafted in '82, and I was part of that team up until the trade deadline.
And all right. So what's your best Dr. J story?
Well, the best one is the one I shared with Rick when I was on with him on his live streams during the initial parts of the lockdown. But it was basically a story of a exhibition season flight. Not even sure where we were going, but Dr. J had a habit of bringing younger guys to sit next to him on the flight and just kind of talk to him. And one day on the flight, it was my turn, and he sits me down, and he probably talked to me 15, 20 minutes, but I don't have a clue what the man said after he got done saying, "Hey, Russ, I got to tell you, in a lot of ways, you remind me of myself." And that's all I heard. And he, like I said, he might have given me the best advice a young player could ever get. But I'm sitting there just thinking, did he just say that? Did he? Oh, my God, and then he was done talking, and all I could do was thank him. Appreciate the words of wisdom, Doc. And went back to my seat and hoping nobody would ever quiz me on what he said, because I don't have a clue. But I was on that team until the trade deadline, and as a matter of fact, they extended the deadline that night, and they pushed it to like 3 a.m. or something. So I knew I heard the rumors, but I was out that evening having a good time with friends, and I was thinking, all right, I made it. I made it through the deadline. And went home content that I was still a Sixer, and woke up to a phone call the next morning that Billy Cunningham needed to see me, and then that's when I got the news that I was traded to the Indiana Pacers. So it went from I think we were 43-7, I think, at that time, and the Pacers had won 4 games.
Who was on the Pacers?
I was getting minutes on that team in Philadelphia. I was getting probably 8-10 minutes a game. And
Russ, who was the star of the Pacers team? You went from Dr. J. Who was the best known player on the Indiana team?
Well, the best player they had at the time was Clark Kellogg, but his career was cut short with a knee injury. Herb Williams was on that team. Jerry Seasting, who later played with Boston, backup point. He was the point guard on that team.
Okay.
There was a forward named George Johnson, not to be confused with the Eraser. He was a 6'7" forward from St. John's that was on that team, and Butch Carter from Indiana. So they were, it just was young guys that, not a very good team at the time. So it was kind of tough, but you go because that's what you do, and you're still in the league. So it was fine. It was just kind of a struggle then to watch them go on and win the championship. and not be able to celebrate and do all that.
Russ, were you on that team when the Sonics the year that Ellis and McDaniel got in a fight outside the bank? Were you on that team? You remember that?
Yeah.
That was those. How were those two personalities between X-Men and Dan?
It was funny because they were the best of friends, but they were both, well, X for sure had a volatile temper, but he was a super nice guy that just you didn't want to piss off. And he and Dale were pretty good friends. So I have no idea exactly what it probably didn't take much, for it to start, and for them to go at it. But then I'm sure right after it was over, they were in getting a drink or something.
There's a great picture of X.
That's a great picture.
I was there for that too.
Russ, Puck and I were talking about last hour about the difference in kind of mentality and maybe approach in the NBA these days, that instead of guys that are primetime competitors trying to figure out a way to have their team defeat their chief rival in the league, you've got it's just as likely that these days guys will think about a way to team up and become a superpower somewhere, as opposed to trying to beat their chief rival. Has that been a change that you've seen in pro basketball that maybe surprised you, going back to days when you'd have guys that would care that much about winning, that things would get that physical as they did in your playing days? And maybe now today you've got guys that are just as likely to have the same agent as they are to maybe want to take out the other guy in a competitive game.
Yeah, I heard you guys talking about that, and it's interesting because I know you were using the LeBron example when he left Cleveland, and I was thinking at the time that that's something that I guess I got a visitor behind me here. That's something that Jordan would have never done.
Right.
That's what struck me, is that I couldn't figure out why LeBron didn't decide to stay in Cleveland and say, hey, I'm going to coax guys over to come play with me, and we're going to win here. That was my my first thought on it. But like you did say, though, there's a lot more guys there's friends that that maybe played together or against each other at younger ages before they ever got to the NBA, where it was a little different. I mean, when I was in high school, the only people shaking hands after a game. Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm gonna let you finish your answer. I want the next question.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and like when I was in high school, the only ones shaking hands were the coaches. I remember if the players shook hands, there might be a fight break out after the game, and it was kind of the same deal. You weren't really going to get in a fight probably, but you didn't really know the guys on the other team. But so the players didn't shake hands in college after games. The coaches did, and then you went to your locker rooms, and then even my first years there in the NBA and their early times there in the 80s, it was you knew guys on the other teams and you were probably friends, but you might have just shook hands and then moved on to the locker room. You didn't stay on the court and talk about the family and stuff like that. So that has kind of evolved. But getting back to what you were saying, that's what I thought too, is why not entice guys to come play with you in Cleveland and win a championship there instead of trying to team up and go somewhere else?
I want to change the focus for a moment, because I was invited as part of this big broadcast, and I know Rick Turner from our days of working together. And when I found out he was the head coach of Jamaica Basketball, we were all kind of like, what? How did that happen? And it's an incredible story how to get to this point. But what I don't know, and maybe a lot of people that might be watching and follow this whole story, is how close is Jamaica to being, to making the Olympics, to being competitive in the Olympics? What's the biggest hurdle you have now until 2024 for this to actually become reality? Because I don't really say that I understand the whole concept of what needs to happen here.
All right. Well, yeah, and Rick brought me on board summer of 2019. I went down and worked the camp with him that he's been going down and working for years. And he had just been named the coach. So he was working at that time trying to get organized with the local coaches there to, at that time, just to figure out where the players are. So as far as the biggest hurdle right now is, I think, is time, and especially with the COVID crisis, there was no way to get together this summer, because this would have been, I probably would have been down there 2 or 3 times by now, but I've still only been down the one time in the summer of 19.
Mm-hmm.
The bigger hurdle is he's got a good list of guys that he can invite to camps to work out, but now it's getting the opportunity to get them together and actually work out and evaluate what he does have. But there is certainly a talent level, and from what I understand, they didn't. You've got to beat the other teams in that region, and I don't think they were that far out of the mix. I think they if they would have beat the Bahamas, or I think it was the Bahamas, if they would have beaten them the last time around, they would have had either qualified or been right there in the mix. So I don't think they're not that far away from getting there, but now it's the program down there was in a lot of turmoil too, as I understand, with some of the organization, some people in the organization, not having the best of scruples, I guess. So they've had some turmoil there. So the funding's not really there, but I think the talent's there. And now it's just, can Rick have enough time to bring everybody together and groom his Jamaican coaches and that's basically what he's got me and a couple other guys, Omar Parker and Kyle Plank, to kind of help him coach his coaches. I think time is the bigger hurdle.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Russ, you played internationally. I mean, how much from your playing days when you played internationally have you seen the growth of the game now? I mean, it just seems like when I was a kid, when I was growing up watching basketball, I remember when Sharonis Marciulionis came over. I remember thinking, oh my God, like, who's this guy? And now, like, it was, for me, when I was watching, he was kind of a rare player to come over. Now, I mean, the game is all international. The best players are international. How much do you think he can grow?
Well, I think it's funny because the percentage of white players in the NBA hasn't changed, but it's the percentage of white American players that has changed. But I played 7 years in Italy, and what you're seeing in the NBA is basically what Europe was the whole time. It was more of an open floor game, big guys outside, had skills. I mean, you talk about Marciulionis. I had also played against Sabonis when he was still in Lithuania, and he was that guy that in Portland, he was a great player in the NBA, but he was a different player. He was Dirk Nowitzki before you ever heard of the guy. He would take a rebound and just take it on his own, full court, pull up and nail a three. He was probably, what is he, 6'11", 7 feet, but he was about 240 pounds, 245 pounds at the time. And the guy was an athlete. He could run before he got hurt, and then, put on some weight, and he changed his game. And then he became a real 5-man that was as good a one as you're going to get. But that's the kind of player he was. And that's what you saw in Europe at the time. And that's kind of, you could see the NBA's kind of adopted that style a little bit more, or a lot more actually, and gone away from the low post, style of play.
During your time in Italy, you crossed paths with Mike D'Antoni. Did you sense at that time that he was determined and would have the opportunity to come be a head coach in the NBA and bring some of that maybe European style that was thought of at the time to be maybe more exclusively to Europe? Kind of what he's been able to do as an NBA coach, kind of open the game up a little bit more?
Well, most definitely. We played together for 2 years in Milan. He was my point guard, and he he was an older player. He's probably 10 years older than me. So he was at the time probably 34, 35 years old. And, he was basically running the team. We had an American coach named Dan Peterson he was kind of like Billy Cunningham was in Philadelphia. He had a roster full of veterans, and he let them play and just made sure that he just pushed the right buttons at the right time, but basically left his veterans, kind of control things. And that's what Mike was. He was the guy on the court running the show. He talked about it at the time. His dad was a coach. I mean, you could just tell he was going to be a coach. And it's not surprising that he would bring with him, some of that style that he was a part of over there.
Hey Russ, when they retire the jersey number 40, when the Sonics come back to Seattle, do you think you should get a piece of it too?
We talked about that too, and I told Rick a story that I used to sign autographs, after the fact. I would sign Russ Schoene number 40 before Kemp, and a couple of kids asked, what's that all about? And I said, well, I used to have the number before him, and they said, really? He took your number? And I'm like, well, not really. I was leaving town, and he wanted the number, and we reached an agreement, and he paid me some cash, and so he could have the number, and I'm pretty sure there were a few kids that actually believed that, but we were talking that Sean's such a nice guy that I might be able to get him to slip my name down in the corner or something. Who knows?
Sure.
He's got a new business right now. Maybe he can name one of his products after you. Have you heard about Kemp's new business?
No, I have not.
You haven't heard about it?
No.
None of you?
I know. Yeah, he's got a pot shop.
Yeah, he's going to own a
pawn shop.
Yeah. Not pawn shop. Pot shop.
Marijuana.
Oh, pot shop.
Yeah.
That kind of shop. I hear you make good money with that, and there's somebody that maybe has some experience in possibly knowing the product. They say that's part of being successful.
Right.
Bernie Bickerstaff, a name that's very familiar to Sonic fans, young and old, and you had the chance to play for him in Seattle. Any good Bernie stories?
My best Bernie story is just the fact that I love the guy, but my mom hated the guy.
Why?
Well, she got mad because he wouldn't put me in the game when she thought I should be in the game. But I had to remind her that hey, Bernie is a guy that he played all 12 guys. So if you're on that roster, you're getting in the game. And there are a lot of guys in my position, because I was anywhere from the 6th man to the 12th man on any given night, and started 1 or 2 games when somebody was hurt, but you just never knew, depending on who you're playing and depending on how you practiced or if you were in his doghouse or not, but whether or not you'd be the 8th slot or 7th slot, or if you'd be sitting down at the end, but sooner or later in the game you were getting in. Because we had Coach Kloppenberg. Bob Kloppenberg was one of the assistants, and he was our defensive guy. And he had this kind of a pressing scheme, defensive pressing scheme that he had. We called it the green squad or something like that. And you would throw 5 guys in, all at once, toward the end of the second quarter. And I was part of that squad, so I'd be down on the baseline, fronting the press, full court press on the inbound, and then we'd go at it for about 3 minutes, just flying all over the court, trying to create havoc, and then you're out. And then the same thing might happen in the second half, with the same group. And then at the same time, you would get subbed in on normal occasions as well, as I'd get subbed in as a backup 3 or 4, depending on the night. So Bernie's one of my favorite coaches because he used his bench, and like I said, I know guys that were in my position that were role players that I might have played in 40, 50 games in a season. And I think the least amount of games I played in Seattle was probably 68 or 9 games. And then there was 1 year out of an 82 game schedule, I played in 80 games. So I can't complain. And he was a good coach. We ended up going to the Western Conference Finals and with a team that nobody expected to. So it was a fun run.
We have something in common. My mom used to get mad at the coach for not putting me into the game too when I was in like 8th grade. I was just a scrub. But I find it funny that you made it to the NBA and your mom's still mad that you didn't get enough playing time. That's pretty hysterical.
It's a mother's love, man.
I love that.
Yeah. Oh, and I have to comment on your hat, on your Dodger hat. I'm happy. I'm happy for you Dodger fans. That's awesome. You didn't have to run up against the Cardinals this year, and I'm Kershaw that he didn't have to see them again.
I was actually very, very happy about that because they were a Dodger nemesis for many years. That's for sure. But I think if they can't do it this year, then they may never win a championship.
Championship, Russ. I mean, my God, they have a payroll of $900 million.
Don't be jealous, though. Don't be jealous, Bob.
Lord. I grew up in the St. Louis area, so I was a Cardinal fan growing up, and but as I mentioned, my mom, she grew up in Chicago. And she's a Cub fan, and
that's tough. That's tough.
And she was a lifelong Cub fan. She actually passed, but the great news is that in 2016, the Cubs knocked the Cardinals out of the playoffs. So then I immediately got on the phone and I call my mom and I'm like, all right, Mom, I'm with you. Go Cubs, go Cubs. And they ended up winning the series, and she got to see him win a series, before she passed. And that, to me, that was perfect. She led an awesome life, and also got to see that because that was one of her big wishes, was that they could finally throw off the curse and win one. So.
Yeah, living in Chicago for a lot of years as I did, I always said there would be nothing bigger from a sports happening standpoint than the Cubs winning a World Series. I mean, Bears Super Bowl was special, and Bulls winning championships, Blackhawks Stanley Cups, but nothing would be bigger than that, just because of how many people had waited as long as they did to see that moment. So
they never got over trading Lou Brock. So
that's right. Very gracious of you, though, to step in and be a Cub fan for at least the moment, to celebrate with your mom, even though it might have been tough for you as a Cardinal fan to muster that kind of enthusiasm anyway. So one of the things that Rick just cued me in on, Rick Turner, that is, the fact that you were at UW in the Brandon Roy days, and
yes,
here in Portland, we certainly have fond memories of Brandon. It's a shame that injuries cut short his pro career after looked like he was going to maybe be one of the greatest Blazers ever. But what do you remember about those days? And obviously, he was a special talent at that point in his career, and I think everybody knew he had a pro career in front of him.
Yeah, he was. He was a real talent, and he had it tough when he first came in. He was getting knocked around a little bit by Doug Wren. He was a physical specimen himself, and but Brandon was, he put the work in, that's for sure. And then Nate Robinson was there too, so the two of them were kind of pushing each other, to kind of like whose team's it going to be, and I think it really brought the best out of both of them. But Brandon he had a rare skill set. I mean, he could do it all, and it didn't look like he was very quick, but he was quick. He was smooth, and he was just a well-rounded basketball player, no question. I didn't know he was going to be as good of an NBA player as he turned out to be, but I knew he was an NBA player.
And now Mike Tyson's coming back, and Nate Robinson wants to be a fighter on the undercard of Mike Tyson's return. I mean, we know that Nate, has never let height keep him down from any any challenge. But that's an interesting idea on his part to become a boxer. Did you ever sense this was something that maybe he was dreaming about doing one day?
He's a hard-nosed kid. I mean, and he's not afraid of anybody. So I wouldn't put it past him. I mean, and he's the kind of athlete that, or I'm not sure what kind of athlete he is today, but at one time, he could play any sport he wanted and do it well. So I didn't hear that, but that wouldn't shock me at all. And he certainly has the confidence and the ego that he could get it done.
You know what I'd like to know is this, and Fish would have a great knowledge on this one too, but there's something about this area up in Seattle that has so much great basketball talent, high school basketball talent, that ends up going to the NBA. Now, I mean, it could be from, I think the most natural response would be the rain. I mean, it rains so much here, the winter's terrible. You go inside and you play basketball. Who's the greatest high school basketball player you've ever seen in Seattle?
In Seattle, well, I didn't see what's his name? No, I can't. Now I'm blanking on his name. Played at Nathan Hale.
Oh, Michael Porter.
Michael Porter Jr. I did not see him play, but a friend of mine did.
Porter doesn't count. He doesn't count.
A friend of mine saw him play, and he said he's the best high school player I've ever seen in my life. But the best high school
player in Decatur,
probably Jamal Crawford.
Jamal Crawford
was probably the best local kid I ever saw play. Man, there's a couple of names I can't even think of right now. Well, Jason Terry comes to mind. I think Jamal, surpasses him as a complete player and with what he's gotten done, and especially in high school.
Yeah,
because there's lots of, like, if anybody saw me in high school, they I wouldn't have been the fifth best guy necessarily in the gym at the time, but then later on in life things change and you grow, you get better, but Jamal was a guy that even in high school he was that kind of guy.
Fish, do you remember going to any games when you're in Seattle, like watching high school kids at all?
I'm going to give a shout out to John Brockman, the beast from Snohomish. I mean, he's my boy up there. I did the one. I mean, I didn't follow high school basketball that close, but remember the Seahome team out of Bellingham that went like 32-0?
Yeah.
They beat, I think it was Quincy Wilder.
Yes.
And that was like one of the greatest games ever. It was whether Seahome could use their fast-paced style and beat the athletic Quincy Wilder. I didn't remember who won the game, but I don't know that I would be able to chime in too much on the high school.
I would say the best. I mean, the best. It's a great, who's the best player you've ever seen. I know the best performance I've ever seen, the best season I've ever seen. And he's gone on. He had a great college career. He's gone on to have a great NBA career. Injuries have kind of robbed him a little bit. I was at the court. I was actually calling the game the night that Isaiah Thomas scored 51 points in a playoff game at the Tacoma Dome, and he scored, I think, 39 in the first half. I mean, 39 points in a high school basketball game. And he's, I don't know how tall Isaiah. What is Isaiah? 5'9", I think.
Yeah, probably.
It was the greatest performance I've ever seen from him. I mean, he was the only kid on the floor for their team. I mean, and he was just everywhere. And I remember he's just the one guy that always kind of comes to mind when I think of. I mean, there's so many great basketball players that we've had a chance to see come through this city, but I always kind of harken back to Isaiah Thomas.
Russ, thanks so much for spending some time with us tonight, and best of luck to you and Rick and the entire staff for the continued effort to bring Olympic basketball to Jamaica. And certainly this is a great opportunity for everybody to understand what the effort is all about. And I know you guys are concentrating all your time and energy to make it happen. And with the great guys that you are and the basketball knowledge that you have, I have a feeling it's going to happen. And thanks so much for sharing some great stories with us tonight.
Thank you.
No, I appreciate it. And I know I can speak for the guys down in Jamaica and everybody involved with the program, how much they appreciate you guys jumping on board and helping out. And it means a lot. And and it's definitely a big help. So thanks again from all of us.
Good luck.
Our pleasure. Thanks again, Russ.
Yeah.